everybody. This is Chris Castro. I'm the community manager for Follower of One. Today, we're going to be talking about Nobody Cares. And Robert Hunt is going to be leading the charge. This is his book, and he's got an amazing presentation for us about accountability and the importance of it. And I've known Robert for basically a couple of months. He's done a couple of private mission trips with his Dallas group, and he's just a great guy. And so I'm looking forward to the presentation. So, Robert, I
Thank
will
you.
leave this in your capable hands.
Awesome. Let's have some fun together. The principles of accountability are what I want to share with you today because the reality is that accountability is a good thing. I think when we think about the word accountability, we think about like it's a punitive thing, like you're in trouble, I'm going to hold you accountable. And it's usually like a threat that we make to people. But the reality is accountability is freedom and power and hope. And it's something that God expects us to really be. And we're going to learn some of the principles. And all these things have come from my own journey, the things that I went through with my beautiful wife, Kathy, as we walked through our own struggles of our life. And what I've seen doing my work for the last 12 years, I lead CEO peer groups. That means I get together every month with business owners and CEOs, and we talk through the challenges of running our business and reaching our goals. And we don't tell each other what to do, but we create an environment where you get to be accountable because you told somebody, I'm going to go do this. I'm going to fire this person. I'm going to hire this person. I'm going to do this, whatever. Whatever you want to do, you get to be accountable because you created the opportunity. And so I've been watching people who do accountability well and people who are not good at accountability. And I've seen the difference. And so in my life, I have learned the value of accountability. I'm going to share it with you today. One thing I want to ask of anyone who's watching this video is slow down, open your mind, don't lock up. If you start to get anxious because of what I'm sharing, it's because you're stubbornly holding on to what you feel comfortable with or are used to. Now, I'm going to say some things that might challenge you today, but if you really remain open, in 30 minutes, I'm going to teach you everything you need to know about accountability, and you get to make the decision of what you do with it, but just stay open-minded and let's learn together. So the really heartbeat of this question starts with, are you living the life you really want? And in 2019, my beautiful wife, Kathy, and I, we asked that question of ourselves. We weren't living the life we wanted, and we realized the problem was us. And we realized that we were making decisions and doing things and living a life that we didn't want, but we had given up. We had just resolved, well, that's just what it is. That's how it's going to be. And so we made a decision that year that we were going to own it. We were going to change our lives. And that even if it was hard things to do, we were going to go ahead and own it because we really felt that we wanted to be able to honor Christ with our lives. But we couldn't honor Christ because we had made so many bad decisions that put us in a place where we felt stuck. We played the role of a victim. And Jesus did not come to keep us as victims. He came to make us victorious. And so it's that foundation of comparing your life to where you want it to be that is the heartbeat of this. You know, Jesus wants us to have a good life. There's a verse in the Bible. I can't read what it says, but it's in there. And it's where he says, I came to give them a rich and satisfying life. And I think that that is the idea that if since God wants you to have a rich and satisfying life, if you're not satisfied, whose fault is that? And that's where accountability comes down to the idea that you can blame God and be angry all you want, but it doesn't make it any better. At some point, if you own it and you decide this is my thing, I'm going to do something about it, you now gain the power to change all that. So let's learn about that together. So I told you about my day job working for business owners with business owners here in DFW. Been doing it for 12 years now. And I've learned a lot about people who are not accountable and those who are accountable and the power that changes from the way they take accountability for things. The definition of accountability is pretty simple. The basic way to look at it is you own it. We don't need to make it too complicated. You own it. That's yours. When you think about accountability, whatever way you want to look at it, let's just use that definition today. You own it. It's all on you. Okay. So with that in mind, we're going to go and see that the reality is accountability, if you own it, actually gives you power and freedom and happiness and joy and hope. And that's what Kathy and I learned through our own journey. And I'm going to share the parts of that that we outline in our book. We wrote a book called Nobody Cares Until You Do. And it's really about this wake up call that just says, look, nobody does care about your junk. They got their own junk to take care of. And in 2019, we looked around and we had all these excuses and blames, but it wasn't fixing anything. And so we realized if we take accountability for our lives, we gain the power to change our lives. And that's a big statement because if you don't like where you're at and you're not satisfied, you could do something about it. And that to me is hope. That to me is power. So in 2019, we had gotten into $90,000 in debt. Some of that was credit cards, some of that was owing the government over the years that we didn't keep up the business the way it should be. And come January of 2019, we had gotten comfortable with making excuses and blaming and saying there was nothing we could do about it. And we were just stuck in this mode, and we just figured that's just what it is. And I think you may be there today. You might look at your life and talk about your marriage or your health or your finances or your faith. And you go, that's just the best it's going to get. That's just how it is. And so we're really not aware of what accountability really looks like because we've been comfortable and used to the idea of being stuck. And we define it as a victim mentality. And so at the beginning of your journey towards accountability, you're really unaware of what you really could have a life like, what accountability really looks like. We describe it like you're climbing a mountain. Mountain takes a lot of planning, preparation, it's a lot of hard work. You can stop along the way, but you're going to have to keep going if you want to get to the top. And we equate it to the journey towards accountability, and we call it this accountability mountain. So at the beginning of the book, there's a satisfaction assessment. It's in the book. If you don't want to buy the book, you can always go to our website, nobodycaresbook.com. You can take it for free because we wanted people to go take the assessment and really be honest with yourself. There's a personal side and a professional side. And we want you to declare honestly, how satisfied are you in each of these areas? Because until you first declare your satisfaction level, you don't know where to go, what to work on. You're not aware of where you may have given up. So, for example, let's say you would score your marriage, your spouse in romance. Let's say you scored a 6, and I ask you why, and you go, well, we really haven't had a great relationship for a long time, but after 20 years, you just kind of get in the zone, and that's just kind of how it is. And so I figure it's not bad. We're not getting divorced, so I gave it a 6. Well, I really want you to score this with the vision of what you really want it to be. Did you get married and think, well, I hope we just end up being sort of good friends? Did you end up having kids and thinking that, boy, I hope they never talk to me and I feel distant from them? Did you have the day you found Christ in your life, did you think it would just kind of wane away? You had a vision of everything in your life at some point, but at some point you gave it up. And I think we spend a lot of time trying to optimize a really cruddy life instead of stopping and resetting the clock and saying, this is the life I want to have. This is the health I want to have. This is what I want my money to look like. So if you go take that satisfaction assessment, or if you have a copy of the book, you can take it and score it in the book. Be really, really honest. Score where you are satisfied today compared to what you wish it was like. And that way you can be honest with yourself. And so once you're taking that assessment, then you figure out, okay, so, oh, there's some music to give you a minute to do it, but you're not going to take a minute to do it. You're going to have to do it on your own time. When you take that assessment and you look at it, you're going to say, okay, so why am I not satisfied with this or that? Why am I not satisfied with my finances? Why am I not satisfied with my faith? And it's when you start to analyze the reasons why that we can see where accountability comes in. Here's another principle that you need to think about. We say a lot of times, I'm going to hold you accountable. I work with business owners, and there are a lot of times they'll say, oh, I'm going to hold my people accountable. Well, the reality is you can't hold people accountable. You can create an environment where they want to be accountable, but at the end of the day, it's up to them. And so when you say I've got these employees and I'm going to have them do this or that, well, if they don't do it, what do you fire them? I mean, you'd have nobody working for you. And even with our own selves, we say we're going to do something, and then we go, well, I got really busy. Well, at the end of the day, if you want to be accountable, you'll be accountable. And if you don't, you don't. And so let's stop having that phrase, I'm going to hold you accountable, or I want you to hold me accountable. Mike, I'm going to call Mike up. Mike, I want you to hold me accountable for reading my Bible every day. And Mike will be like, sure. And then at the end of the week, if I didn't read it, is it Mike's fault? No, of course not. It's my fault. So I've got to create it where the ownership is on me. That's the principle of accountability. I think back to those moments where well, let me hold off on that. Let's go to the principles of responsible versus accountable. I think a lot of people think they're being accountable when at best they're just being responsible. When you hired somebody, you agreed, if you show up, I'll give you money. Now we're even. That's the deal. You get a paycheck, you do some work here. But when they interviewed, they said how great they were, how responsible they were, how hardworking they are, how much they love to work here, how smart they are, and they'll bring all their best game to your business. And that was before they met their boss. And that was before they met their jerk coworkers and their horrible customers and all these problems that come up. And then we move from being delivering on the promises that we said when we interviewed to go, well, look, I don't need this. I'm just going to show up and collect my paycheck. and we pull back and we just start doing our job instead of actually being fully engaged in what's going on. And that's responsible. You give me money, I show up and sit at the desk, we're even. But if you're really going to be accountable, you have to be accountable to what you promised you would do when you got hired, when you interviewed for the job. And if that means if you have a jerk boss, then you have to go work it out with the boss. If you got lazy coworkers, you got to figure out a way to motivate them to care. If you got horrible clients, you got to talk to them and figure out why they're so horrible and find a way to work that through. You just don't suck it up. And so I think in all the areas of our lives, we tend to be more responsible than we are truly accountable. Accountability is proactive in nature. You know, the IRS says that 60% of Americans will need someone else to provide for them in their last days. That means you got 40 or 50 years to save for retirement, and 60% of America is not going to be ready. How is that possible? We talk about it. There's endless seminars about ways to save 401ks, investment plans. We know it's all out there, but we're not doing it. So we're not being proactive in the effort towards the goal we want to see at the end. So when you're old and you have no money, you'll be responsible and you'll hit up your kids for cash to pay your rent. Or you'll be responsible and find a home where you can go live to and get government subsidy. That's being responsible, and that's too late. If you want to really be accountable, you have to proactively do things, knowing what you want at the end, and then do the hard things ahead of time to own it. It's a big difference between accountable and responsible. Hope that makes sense. So when you move from being unaware to the awareness of the accountability you have, the first thing we do is blame. We blame things for it. We blame the economy. We blamed our customers. We blamed our franchise. We just blamed the bad luck of business. Or we made excuses like, well, I'm not a good salesperson, or I don't know how to do this, or yeah, I didn't know this guy was going to come up with this. You know, all these things that we use to keep us as a victim in life. It's a tendency that we have as a knee-jerk reaction to try and get it off our back, but all it does is remove the drive to do something about it. If I blame something or make excuse and I tell you, you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And then everyone like supports me like, oh, that's a really good thing that you're not taking ownership for your finances. But the blame and excuse doesn't change it at all. And frankly, we are making it worse for ourselves because we are staying as a victim. Whereas we could move to a place of owning it, we could do something about it. So when Kathy and I in 2019 realized, look, we got $90,000 in debt, we could blame the business, we could have my excuses, but at the end of the day, we still owe $90,000 in debt. And so if you go back to your satisfaction assessment and you look at what you have there, you might say, well, my health is really bad. Well, how come? Well, you know, I'm old. I'm 62. The body doesn't work like it used to do. Well, yeah, but if I was 40 pounds lighter, the body would be giving me a break. But that's my choice. I have to own that. You can make all kinds of reasons for why you're not having fun or you're not doing the kind of things you want to do. But at the end of the day, if you own it, it's yours. And so looking at that level of satisfaction, we want you to be able to make a plan to do something about it. In the book, at the end of every chapter, we give you a little bit of work to apply it to your life. One of the things you can do is you can take the word but and you can replace it with the word and. So let's say you want to start your own company. I'd like to start my own company, but I don't have enough money. Well, let's take the but out and let's replace it with the word and. I'd like to start my own company and I don't have enough money. Okay, great. There's the place to start. Go get enough money. And then your excuses are, well, I don't know anybody. Oh, it doesn't matter. And then the blame will be, well, the economy is really bad. All these things that we choose to let hold ourselves back, they're putting us in a place of being a victim. And remember, if God has something for you to do with your life, He's going to equip you. There's nothing that you're going to face that God isn't able to carry you through and equip you and help you. And so when we put God back in a box by saying, I can't, well, you're really refusing to let God work through you in the life that He's given you. Being a good steward is more than just money. It's the days of your life. It's the relationships around you. I live in this neighborhood with these neighbors. And when we moved here, it was COVID. We moved here in March of 2020 and the world shut down and we didn't know anybody when we got here. But after a couple months of hanging out, realizing nobody ever comes out of their house, we went and bought 40 bags of big tortilla chips and went door to door with a note and said, hey, it's Cinco de Mayo. Let's have a party. Here's a bag of chips. You get your own guacamole and beer, and we'll do a Zoom call. And we invited everyone in our neighborhood to a Zoom call, and we got to meet people. We met a dozen families that day and just said, look, we're all trapped in our houses. What do you do? Where are you from? How long you lived here? So you can make an excuse about why you're stuck somewhere. Or you can go do something about it. Change your butt to an and is a great way to do that. Okay, let's keep moving. If the blame and excuse don't work, you just say, I can't. I can't do that. I can't do that. I can't sell my house. See, Kathy and I in 2019, at the beginning of the year, we said, we're not happy with our lives. We owe $90,000 in debt. What are we going to do about it? And I said, look, we got a house. Why don't we sell the house and start over? Oh, we can't do that. You can't sell our house. This is where we live. Where will we go? I don't know. Well, this is our home. We can't just sell our house. And instead of saying I can't, you really need to change it to I won't, because I won't is a different phrase. I won't sell my house is giving you the option, but you don't want to do it. If I say to someone else, hey, I can't do that, they're like, okay. But if I say I won't, they go, well, how come? And so we don't say I won't, we say I can't, and then it's done. Again, you're holding yourself back from living the life that you really want by the words you use because you're done. You blame, you make excuses, say I can't. Well, there's nowhere to go. But far too often, it's really I won't. And I know things in life are hard. It was hard to sell our house. It was embarrassing to have to admit to my family and friends and my clients and our neighbors, hey, I owe $90,000 in debt. I'm selling my house to start over and get right. And that was embarrassing. But that doesn't mean you can't. It just means you didn't want to. I met a guy recently in the Dallas area named Nick Vujicic. Nick has no arms and no legs, but he's married and he has 4 kids. He was born that way. Now, Nick cannot do some things like feed himself or do anything else out there that you and I would consider normal. But this guy says, if I can be God's hands and feet, what's your excuse? And so Nick cannot do some things, but most of us are not Nick. There's pretty much most things we can do, we just don't want to do it. So take away the things that hold you back from being a victim by stop saying the word I can't and figure out how has God led you to this place where you can move on and be a witness for him. All right, let's keep going. After we say I can't and we had the blame and excuse, we just go to wait and hope. We would wait and hope every year. Maybe business will get better next year. Maybe next year God will just plunk a bunch of money in the backyard for us and it'll be all fine. He didn't. And so in 2019, we put our house on the market. We sold it and closed in March of 2020. Moved into this house that we live today. For 5 years, we've been here. And we took all that money, we paid off all our debt. By April of 2020, we were debt free. And it was an amazing sigh of relief. I've forgotten what it felt like to live without stress and worry and fear. And my perspective of life was so skewed by years of blaming and making excuses and saying I can't do anything about it. And the anxiousness and stress of, okay, will I make this month's payment? Can we afford to live here? All this worry and fear that I created, but I wasn't willing to own. And when I owned it, I gained the power to do something about it, and we changed it. Because when the pain of where you are is worse than the pain of where you want to go, you'll change. And that's what it was for us. There was a lot of pain there. We didn't like where we're at, so we were willing to change. And that really comes down to that moment where you realize, look, nobody cares until you do. But when you really do care enough to do something about it, you can change it. The moment you take accountability for everything in your life is the moment you gain the power to change anything in your life. And then once we conquered our debt, we had this like fresh energy of, man, we could do anything. And so we looked at our marriage and we'd had a lot of years of fighting and arguing because of this. So we started going to counseling. And you would say, oh, my husband would never go to counseling. Maybe he wouldn't. I don't know, but you haven't asked. This is where you're saying I can't, but you really mean I won't. And it was difficult and challenging, but we wanted a vision of our marriage where we didn't have all the baggage that came from the years of stress in our lives anymore. And then we looked at our friendships and we looked at our faith and I was mad at God for not fixing my problems and I needed to process that and let go of that because that's stupid. God didn't make me spend the money I spent. That was my foolishness. So there's a lot of things to work through, but if you own it, you have the power to do something about it. So once you've crossed that bridge, that ravine of that scary little crevasse in the ice mountain across a rickety old bridge, and you've gone from being a victim to the journey to the path of being a victor, you have the opportunity to continue up the mountain. The first step of that is to acknowledge reality. The reality is we had a house. The reality is we could sell the house. There was more than $90,000 of equity in that house. By the time we paid the real estate agent and he got all his cut and we paid to cover the movie fees, we had just about $90,000. We had just enough money to pay it all off. So praise God for that. Sometimes the reality is harsh and but it doesn't stop you from going there. I grew up in a very poor family in Southern California. And my mom had an abusive husband who beat her and the kids all the time when she found out that she was pregnant with me. My dad had said he got a vasectomy, but he lied. And so here she is pregnant again, and she had to make a choice. What am I going to do? The reality is, I've got this horrible situation. Do I want to bring another child into it? And my mom decided that only God creates life, and she's not going to be the one to take it away. And so she had me. I'm thankful. But that brought me into a very dysfunctional family. And that was part of my journey, part of my life. You know, life is 10% of what happens to you and 90% of how you respond to it. And so when I got into this growing up in this family, I didn't know what a good father was like. I didn't know how to be a good dad. I didn't know how to be a good husband. So when I got married, I had a lot to learn. It led to a lot of really bad decisions in my life and a lot of challenges that I wasn't prepared for. But I had to own it because it was my marriage and my life. And even though it was hard, we had to continue to press on, and you learn through that. So once you acknowledge the reality, you need to embrace the suck because a lot of decisions we make are really, really hard and it might just suck. It sucked to sell our house. We had a beautiful home with a movie theater upstairs. It was 3,500 square feet. It was beautiful, but couldn't afford it. And so selling that, it sucked. But you know what was sucked more was being in debt, being miserable and fighting about money all the time and having fear and worry that I created. So you're going to have a bummer somewhere. Either you're going to hate being stuck where you are or you're going to hate the process you go through to get out of it. But when you go through this one, life's better. When you stay here, it still sucks. And so you have to make a choice. Am I willing to press on towards a better life by owning it and doing something about it? You acknowledge reality, embrace the suck, and you find a solution. I'm telling you, the solutions, once I got my head clear, the solutions for my life really became popping into my head easily. We found out this and this idea. We actually hired a guy who was a financial expert who did Dave Ramsey's philosophy of training people. He actually came to our house. We paid him $250 every time he came to our house to look at our money and help us make a budget and go, wow, you guys spent a lot of money. And we needed someone who would call us out and go, that's not healthy living. That's not a good way to steward God's money. And so he wasn't spanking us, but he was calling it out straight up. We invited him in for that moment. We created the opportunity for accountability by bringing someone in to help us see the opportunity, and he helped us find a solution. And that's what you need to do is you need to be able to figure out what knowledge do I need to move me from stress to pressure. Stress is bad, pressure is great. When I was so overwhelmed in debt, I stressed all the time. How will I do this? I'm screwed. There's no solution. Oh, panic, worry, frustration. When I added knowledge, hey, I could sell my house. Hey, we could figure out this plan. I moved from stress to a place of pressure to get it done. So when you're panicking and freaking out, add knowledge to the equation and you'll find that you can move to pressure. And we have a book called the Bible, which is full of knowledge. And so if you're not reading it every day and soaking it in, I mean, just this last couple of weeks, I read through Joel. Who reads Joel? You know, it's like this minor league prophet out there. And there was some really cool things I learned. Like God says, "I will keep the fruit on the vine just long enough so that it comes off in your hand. It won't fall on the ground and spoil." That's just how much God pays attention to our life and the opportunities He brings to us. He'll make it just at the right time. And I needed to hear that because of all the things I got going on right now. So knowledge brings me to a place of calm, but it also gives me the focus and the energy to go chase something that God's taking me in that direction. He will equip you for every good work. And the knowledge is found in the Word of God. So dive into that and learn. The other thing is you need to invite input in your life. If you're running solo, you're going to make stupid decisions. When you let someone know all the things you're working on, they go, "You're doing what?" No, don't do that because they don't have any emotion attached to your decisions. You have a lot of emotion attached to your decision. Some of the worst decisions I made, I spent so much time thinking about it that convinced me this is a really great decision. And so by the time I got ready to go, anyone who would say anything against it, I'd be like, "Oh, you don't know what you're talking about." And I wasn't open minded and I made really bad decisions. So invite input. Let people that you know and respect and that you love be a part of your journey. They're not telling you what to do, and they're not holding you accountable. You're creating input that brings knowledge to your journey so you can make a better decision. One of the reasons we don't ask for help is that asking for help makes us feel vulnerable and needy. I need your help. But if you change the word I need to I want, you move to a place of, hey, I'm so smart, I'm going to let you help me. It builds confidence in you, and the person you're asking feels better about it because you've invited them in because you see value in them. I want Mike's help because Mike's super smart and I like Mike's heart and he's going to help me and and Mike, I'm inviting you in. I'm letting you help me with this. Mike feels good and I feel good and no one feels weak. So change I need help to I want help, but ask for help. That's how we get better. One of the things you need to consider as you're looking at your life and you're looking at what you want to do in the area of accountability. Sometimes people will quote, I'm pursuing excellence. And excellence in my world is doing the best of your ability while you pursue the life you really want. Because I think a lot of times we focus on just one area and we go, everything's good because I'm that. Like I have people who are making a ton of money in their career. They got a huge company. They're being very successful. And in that eyes, everything's excellent. But if your marriage is falling apart or you've walked away from your faith or you have no peace in your life, what's the value of a bunch of money? So whatever plan you're making as you're taking ownership for your life and you're creating a world of accountability, make sure everything's at least above the zero line. Maybe you got to take the career down a notch. Maybe you don't take the next promotion. Maybe instead of working overtime to get that extra bonus, you just work normal. And then you go to the kids' baseball games or go on date night or do something fun or build a friendship. Or how about do nothing? How about just sit and read a book and listen to music and let your soul rest? How about enjoying the Sabbath day so that you can actually connect with God and enjoy and be ready for the week every weekend? Don't trade off anything to go below zero so everything something else could go higher. Make the intentional decision that as I pursue excellence in my life, everything will at least be above zero. All right, so you acknowledge reality, embrace the suck, you find a solution, and you make it happen. Selling our house was a lot of work. We had to go rent a storage place. I have no money, but I'm renting a storage place to move out all the junk we'd collected over the years of just spending money we didn't have to buy stuff we didn't need so I could figure out where to put it. And so we ended up moving it to a rental place so the house would look easier to sell. And we got it all fixed up and did all the things the real estate wanted to do. And it just worked and worked and got it to a place where we could sell it. But even though that was hard work, we were excited about where we were going and we were excited for the journey we're on and where we were thinking that we're going to take control of this and make it better. And you press on for that, even through the challenges that you face in that journey. One of the things that holds us back in doing this is that we've lost our identity. If you've had challenges in your life long enough, you start to think you suck, and you don't. Because the rule is that any identity you have, no role can be any higher than the identity you believe you are. So if you think you're a five, no role you can play can be any higher than a five. But if you recognize that in God's eyes, you're a 10, you were born a 10 and you will die a 10. And because of who He created you to be, you're a 10. So all the roles you play can go up. But sometimes being a business owner where I lost a lot of money and went into debt makes me feel like I'm less than a 10. Having fights with my wife about our debt makes me feel like I'm a bad husband. And then the stress I brought onto my kids and the journey I was at made me feel like I wasn't a good father. So now I start to think all those things combined, I'm not a good person. But that's a lie. You got to go back to the reality you are a 10. Because when you acknowledge you're a 10, all the other roles you play can come up to a 10. So start by getting grounded in the identity we have in Christ. He loved us enough to die for us. And he's got a plan for your life. And he chose you to go and be his light in the workplace. He chose you to be an example to your neighbors by the lifestyle you live and all your coworkers and your family members. He chose you for that. So go back to the identity that you are a 10 and let's see about raising all the other roles up in the process. I had a prayer breakfast event this morning. 700 people come together at the Dallas area, talk about being a light in the workplace. And I feel like these days it seems so much darker, but I think it's darker because the light is not doing its job. And if we just show up at work and we don't suck and we're not mean and we're not playing games, we don't have to pass out tracts. This is what Follower of One's all about. You don't have to go on this tirade, have a Bible on your desk, condemn everyone to hell. You just have to show up and be the hardest working, most caring, best listening, the one who invests in the relationship where God put you. Go be a light at work, in your neighborhood, with your family, everywhere. The light doesn't just work at work, it works everywhere. And so if If you're concerned that things are getting darker, it's probably because you're not shining the light the way you should. So let's show up everywhere and bring more light into our world. Something to remind you of is that as you're in this process, you're going to fall. I have fallen since I got out of debt. We have struggled. We made some bad decisions again. We had to reel back and go, okay, come on, let's get back focused. You're going to make mistakes, but that's why we tie on to other people. I met this guy who talked about mountain climbing and how dangerous it is. And at the very top of the mountain where it's really sharp peaks like this and the wind's whipping, you'll tie a rope onto you and tie a rope to a buddy. And if either one of you falls, the other one is trained to jump the other way. So if we're walking along this cliff and Mike falls, I don't just watch Mike fall. I have to quickly jump the other way or we're both going to die. You need someone to tie on to who will jump for you, who when you go, man, I blew it. I'm doing what I didn't want to do anymore. They don't do it for you. They're not accountable for you. You are. But they love you and they challenge you and they go, well, let's get back up, man. Let's get going. Again and again and again. Because we're never done until we're standing in front of Jesus. But you got to tie on to somebody so that they'll be there for you. And it's not about reaching the top. He also said at the top of Mount Everest, when you get there, you can only be there 7 minutes. You spend months training and weeks to get there and days climbing up. And when you get there, you get 7 minutes and then you got to go back. There's a line of people going up the mountain. You want your spot, you got to get out of the way because someone else wants to be up there. So all this stuff is not about us completing it. It's about building the discipline of continually walking with Christ, continuing to be available for his purposes, and being good stewards of the life we're living so we're ready to climb the next mountain and the next mountain and the next mountain. Because life is better when you own it. I've proven that in my own life. I see it in my clients' life. And anyone who has read our book and called us back saying, this is the wake up I needed. So this is the QR code to go find our book online. It's nobodycaresbook.com. I don't care about selling the books. I got to sell 50,000 copies just to break even. But what I would like to do is change more lives. I would like people to understand the power and freedom of accountability. So go visit our website, go download the satisfaction assessment, start with that. If you want to read the book, great. We'd love to have you have that as a tool, but you can own it and it can be a better life for you. That is my presentation on accountability.
Well, thank you, Robert. Do you have any questions for the audience or do you want anything, any
I have a
feedback or
question.
anything? Yeah.
I have a question actually. So can you guys hear me okay? My
Mhm.
Yes, sir.
microphone and everything working? So so in in a business relationship or in a personal relationship, we have these partners. What do we do if our partner has different understanding of accountability than we do?
Hmm. Well, when accountability partners, if you ever called them that, I've been in a
Well, I was
lot of
thinking
situations.
more about like spouses and partners in our business.
Oh, okay.
Right? These are people who we're yoked with, but
Yeah.
if they don't have the same vision of accountability that we have, how does that impact our ability to be able to, what do you recommend that we do to kind of get everybody on the same page?
The first thing is for you to just model it yourself. The more that you live out accountability, the more that your life is better, the calmer you're at, the more peace and joy you're going to have. And they're going to go, what's going on? How come things seem so much better for you? This is the same thing we do with our faith. We don't run around telling everyone to accept Jesus in their heart. We model it by showing up at work and being hard workers and caring for people. So by you creating a world of accountability, if you just own your own junk, everyone would look at you with envy. But what happens is we're so quick to come into the room and go, oh, traffic was horrible today. Oh, this guy on the repairman was so bad. And we love to complain and we love to blame people. We love to make excuses for why things aren't going on. And you're being a victim. But if you stop doing that and you own all of it, you will be rocking everything you're doing. It's still going to be hard work either way, but you're going to have way better results. And people are going to want to know, how come this is working so well for you? Because I own it. I
Mhm.
planned ahead. Remember, accountability is proactive. So if you know that a repairman tends to run late, which they do, they run late all the time. You're a fool who sits there at 2 o'clock and goes, where is he? It's 2 o'clock. You got to know it's between 2 and 8. which means they show up about 8, right? And so, get geared up for the realities of the things you're
Yeah.
doing and be realistic, but plan ahead. Work from home, bring some projects and be busy with your time. Do a load of laundry, whatever. But don't make it where you're angry at the world because things didn't go your way. And as you model that, people will start to want to know more about it. The second thing is just have a conversation. Just talk about it. In my own life, I found myself blaming this and making excuses, and I don't want to do that anymore. And so when we talk about stuff, I want to do this. Can you support me in that?
Mhm.
I think if you read the book together and talk about it as a couple or as a business partner, too often we make business decisions based on the journey we've had and the big bag of junk we carry over our shoulders everywhere we go. We need to reset that narrative to go, we have been called by God to be stewards of the resources we have. We've been enabled by Christ to go and do all these things. And we've been stuck
Yeah.
making excuses and blaming, and we need to own that. You can reset the expectations through a conversation. Good question.
Thanks.
I would
What
just
makes
like
it
to
for
make
you?
a comment. I love how you stress the difference between stress and pressure, accountability and responsibility, and I need versus I want help. All of that was really great to get the nuances of that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. The book is full of the things that we've learned in our own journey. Salem shares about trying to kill himself at one point, and we've talked about our own struggles raising James and the kind of decisions we make in our own lives. And we want to be vulnerable because we want people to be inspired to own their own stuff. And we're taking the time to articulate these principles in a way that we hope people can follow. I'm glad you saw that. Well, it sounds like we're out of questions, so I guess we could end the call.
Well, I'm grateful. Thanks very much for doing this.
It's my pleasure. When we get together next time, we're going to talk about how to avoid overload. One of the reasons why people don't do what they're supposed to do and they make excuses or blame is because they've really not created a world where there's room for the unexpected. Margin is the principle is the solution to avoiding overload. But when we say to God, I want to support this guy on a mission trip, but I don't have enough money, that's an excuse. I want to do this, but we can't because of that guy. We're blaming. God doesn't want our excuses. And so if we're going to truly allow ourselves to be used by God, we must create margin in our lives. Margin is the thing that allows us to have God interrupt our day. And Mike, you talk about it in a lot of your devotionals. When you go to talk to someone and you're being nice to them, and they're like, "Why are you being nice?" And we're ready to give a why. But a lot of times we're so freaking busy, we don't have time to be nice to anybody because traffic was bad because you didn't plan ahead. You weren't proactive. You didn't leave room for traffic. Oh, well, look at that. That's a cool thing. We'll get those things going. Um, if you know traffic occurs all the time and you don't plan to go to work early, that's on you. Don't blame, don't make excuses. You should have gone to work early. And so if we're not creating a world where we watch our finances and our calendar and our health and our walk with the Lord, there is no room for God to interrupt any of that. Therefore, God is a watch, he's an observer on your life. You're not bringing him with you, and he's not working through you because there's no time, money, or energy in your body for him to use you. If we're
Yeah.
going to truly be available for God, we've got to create margin. That's what we're going to talk about in our next session.
Yeah, the margin workshop, for those of you who are watching the recording, is going to be on November 6th at 2 o'clock Eastern, 1 o'clock Central, and you guys can figure out the rest of it from there.
Cool.
This has
Hey,
been really,
we've at least got you doing more than one time zone.
Yes, yes, I'm trying. That's my accountability, is I am trying to say more than just Eastern.
Francis, you were saying something?
I just enjoyed this. I had not heard of your book, and I saw the email this morning and hopped down, and I like the title, Nobody Cares. And that I have some accountability partners, and we've become more like friends, and we don't really hold ourselves as accountable as we should. But I like the concept because we tend to blame somebody else if we don't get it done because they were supposed to hold us accountable, or we make excuses, like you said. So I really enjoyed your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Well,
Yeah, thanks.
we'll catch you on the next one.
You bet. Thanks, everybody.
You're
If you
on.
have any questions, feel free to connect with Robert. I will put all of his information in the show notes. And we look forward for those of you that can attend the next margin workshop. Have a great day, everybody.
Bye bye.